Whenever I think of games that don't need a story, I think of Halo. But I also think of games with a great story, and I think of Halo.
Just from Miyamoto's Fever Dream, like exactly what you just said.
So in a way, they kind of like created their own barriers.
Just take flex tape and they smash the story over these amazing, wonderful mechanics to kind of give it some continuity. Hot take here. I think Ocarina of Time was more story.
Yeah. Um. I might disagree with you.
Welcome to Dev Grumps. Is that okay? Can I use that name?
I don't know. I don't know, man.
We'll see. We shall see. But yeah, this is Adam, and you're on Space Dodo, and we're having a podcast about games. Just so you know who you're listening to, we make games. We've got a lot of published games. Maybe not a lot of money from games between the both of us. We're XR developers full time, by the way. Like we work for a company. But my background's like weird. It's like video and philosophy and all sorts of weird stuff. Caleb, where'd you go to school for?
I went to school specifically for game design, and I finished with my bachelor's.
Yeah, this guy has a bachelor's in game design.
Whoa.
Yeah, video game stories. Do
Uh-huh.
they matter? Does a video game need a story?
My gut reaction is no, but it's more complicated than that.
Yeah, which is good. Yeah, so like,
So,
what about like, man, I don't know, an axe throwing game? Should that have a story?
it doesn't need a story. So when I think of X throwing game, I think of just like almost like a mini game, kind of.
Yeah,
Um, and it doesn't necessarily need a story because you don't need to feel for the characters and stuff, you know. But it does have to have a cohesive art style that maybe gives elements into the background of the universe that it's in.
it's got to have continuity.
Yeah, I guess you could play an axe game in space. You know, maybe if the axe game was in space, that's a part of the story and a part of the universe. You know,
Yeah,
it may if the axe game was took place in medieval times, you know, that would make sense uh with history. So you do have a story, even though you're not telling a story.
yeah, I like that idea. And honestly, like Mario Party, right? Like there's a systemic story that happens, like the story of who wins and who loses and where you go. And even though it's just like a collection of mini games, like your brain is always telling stories. And even with something like an axe throwing game, you're still kind of giving yourself a continuity and a story about maybe why you're there and what's going on.
Definitely.
One gripe I hear all the time, I hear two sides of it. People will be like, I love Zelda stories. Like I just love Zelda stories. And other people will be like, man, Zelda stories just don't matter because they're just made up to fix whatever problems they have to fix the mechanics up.
Yeah, I've never thought of it that way, but I, I mean, some of the stuff just seems like so out there and insane that it had to be like from a fever dream of one of the devs.
Yeah, right. Well, it's a big flex tape thing. Oh yeah, for like Skyward Sword, the whole namesake of the sword, they were trying to figure out like a way to shoot beams out of the sword, and they needed to do it in a way that felt visceral, like felt right when you threw it, like holding a button maybe,
Mhm.
then launching it, and then they're having issues with the technology too, like getting the Wiimote to work right, and they had Miyamoto actually woke up in the middle of the night and thought, that's it. That's it. Now he's the producer. He's not like the director of this one, but he's still thinking about these ideas. So he wakes up and he's like, "That's it. You hold the Wiimote directly over your head, and then you call a beam from the sky." That's what made Skyward Sword, like the whole
Oh, the
namesake.
whole entire name. Oh my.
Yeah, just from Miyamoto's Fever Dream, like exactly what you just said.
That's amazing.
And yeah, and it's all, and they just take flex tape and they smash the story over these amazing, wonderful mechanics to kind of give it some continuity.
So in a way, they kind of like created their own like barriers or you know how like Everybody says like creativity comes from like restrictions,
Mm-hmm.
and I think maybe developing for the Wii was one of the restrictions they had to be creative.
Yes. Yeah. And see, that's my thing is like when people are like, oh, well, the story only matters if they're like crafting the story first. I'm like, since when has that ever been the case? Like when someone writes
No
a
way.
novel, somebody says, this thing's got to be 700 pages, you know? And that's their restrictions. They have to like just make this thing interesting for 700 pages. And they talk about random stuff and weird character development moments, things you would never have if you weren't trying to fill 700 pages. Or a poem on the inverse. It's gotta like when people pick a poem style, a lot of times they pick the restriction. They're like, this thing's gonna have an ABAB rhyme scheme, like a sonnet, and then at the end it's gonna have to that rhyme at the end. It's gonna have this many lines, and it's like really, really strict. But yet we don't negate the meaning of these things. We don't be like, oh, well, a novel can't be a good story because they decided it had to be long first, or a poem can't be a good poem because they decided it had to rhyme first. Like, so to me, a game story doesn't can be a great game story, even though they decide it has to fix the mechanic first, like explain the mechanic first.
Yeah, I think if everything went perfectly and there was no roadblocks, there would be no creative solutions for things. Just like the video you sent me the other day, like they only had for Unreal Tournament the like one of that map that had the two towers on the end of it.
Let's
They
see what
only
it was
had
called.
they only had like 160 polygons to work with. So instead of making or wasting those polygons on the stairs, they made teleporters instead. So those and it
Yeah,
was inherently more fun because of that.
and that's like a game design staple now. Like
Yeah.
everything has teleporters, like especially shooters based off the Unreal Tournament all have
hmm
teleporters.
I also found it interesting. It was one of the first games to use an announcer, because that's a staple now too.
Yeah, like and to get the player all amped up and stuff. Like one of the
Yeah,
best times I've experienced that was in Robo Recall, where like it was just like made it feel awesome. Like bash robots' heads
yeah.
together and it'd be like obliterated. I don't even know exactly what he says, but
Oh yeah.
it was just amazing. And
Dude, Robo Recall is one of the best games for VR, hands down.
100% agreed. And I think because we're both VR devs now, it's canon. Now it's fact.
Yeah. It
Oh,
runs great. It has a story.
yeah, yeah, and the story explains the mechanic limitations, like the fact you can teleport and stuff. Like it's
Yeah.
all handled by the story. It smooths it all over to where like you're teleporting in Robo Recall, but like a lot of people hate it because it breaks the immersion. Right? They fix that problem because they're like, listen, we're teleporting you everywhere. We're teleporting you to your job site. We're teleporting you guns. You're teleporting around. Like you just
Yeah.
this is your job. How it works.
But it doesn't give you like the full story. Like there's no like ending. You don't like beat the robots, Like it's just kind of like little flavor pieces of story. Like you get the intro and then you get like these disembodied voices that tell you what to do and are like your authority.
Yeah, they're kind
But
of a Chekhov's gun, actually. Like, are you familiar with that concept?
yeah, like if you show the gun on the stage, then you have to fire it.
Yeah, yeah. It makes it like if you prep its relevance, you got to use its relevance. But some people would
Yeah.
even argue like it's stricter than that. But I think most normal sane people would say like you has to. It can't just be every set piece. If it's got a little bit of prep, it's got to show up later.
Right.
J.J. Abrams does not believe in that.
He's
But that's another story for another time.
putting
Uh,
on a gun show.
yeah, he's putting on a gun show. He's like, he saw that gun, but I'm going to pull out a bigger one. We're not going to talk about that first gun anymore. But Robo Recall does that in a smart way because it gives you these AI voices and they have a little like tiff between each other. And then, like, then it just kind of keeps going on. And one's like, clean up the robots. And the other one's like, you're doing great. And then at the very end, it turns out like the first robot, spoiler alert, skip 10 seconds if you don't want the spoiler. The first robot is actually the enemy. Like you didn't know that? Oh, okay. But you don't think these are actually going to play into the story at all. You just feel like they're there to serve the game. But then they actually help tell the story itself. Like they used a Chekhov gun thing to be like, hey, you spend a lot of time with these people. these are who the story's about, is your interaction with these AI voices.
Adam, why do movie adaptations fail of
Uh,
games?
I have big opinions about this.
You want to know the first movie video game that I watched?
What?
Or the one that I can remember, is the Prince of Persia movie, and
See,
I absolutely hated it. It was terrible.
I've not played Prince of Persia. I know the mechanic.
Oh man, Prince
Um,
of Persia was a big part of my life.
oh man, I bet that was so disappointing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, because I was like so excited that like they finally made like a cool looking movie adaptation of a video game,
That
and then
wasn't
I
a
went and
Mario
saw it in
Brothers movie.
theaters. Right. I went and saw it in theaters, and I swear like that was I was probably only like 13 at the time, but that was one of the times that I almost walked out of the theater because it just made the story come in full circle.
Right.
Didn't make any sense. Which the original Prince of Persia games had a very solid story, and I think that maybe one of the problems is that they didn't borrow from that at all. They just kind of made it like like a superhero's first movie, where they
Yeah.
like tell the backstory and stuff like that. That like from what I remember, that's what it was like, and there wasn't any action or anything,
Yeah.
It was just all mystical.
Yeah.
Um,
And I bet you felt awful, like they just popped your bubble and it never really came back for Prince of Persia.
I think that's when I started separating um franchises. And
Yeah.
like I don't tie them into the same universe. Like that's that director's vision, and I don't like it. So like that's not. Wow, Derek is giving me a call.
He called me too. I had to ignore it. Sorry, Derek.
Um, but anyway, yeah, Prince of Persia was the movie was terrible. Um,
Dude, well, so reason I didn't go see it is because I just like felt like it was going to be terrible, and I can tell you there's a couple of business reasons that we'll just blow through real quick of why movies are bad, and then there's like some actual like game mechanic reasons I think game movies are bad. So the reason movies are bad for game stuff is for the most part it's because the standard has been set by this German company that just like pumps out a movie with an IP, and game IPs are cheap and they want movies, and so they like buy an IP, they like burn it out, they do some shifty tax stuff. It's pretty much like The Producers but in real life. Have you seen that movie, The Producers?
I have not.
That it's a movie where these two guys make a Broadway play that's supposed to tank so they can keep all, like there's a rule where they can keep all the investors' money if it tanks and the show gets canceled. But that's what they do
Reminds
in real
me.
life. Yeah, with game movies, they just like straight up crank them out to like do shifty tax stuff and keep the money and burn
Why
the
why
IP.
was uh why was the Sonic movie so successful? Do you think it's because of the controversy, or do you think it's actually a good movie?
I think it was a few things. Now I haven't actually seen the movie, and here's why: I'm so burnt out from a lot of video game movies, and I read Sonic comics as a kid, and to
Mm,
me, Sonic was freedom fighters. And so this some people would probably be like, well, you have a very specific iteration of Sonic, and I know that's the case. Like I know
yeah,
this is my headcanon, right? But like in those comics, they were like these group of animals that were fighting Dr. Robotnik from turning all these animals into robots. And they weren't aliens, and they were like actual just animals that were fighting back. They were the freedom fighters, and they had FF
yeah.
on stuff. And the games have really never followed that storyline exactly from the early games probably, but later, like Sonic Adventure Battle 2 is not that story exactly. It's just like generic, like, hey, we're fighting. And I don't even know why. Like in Sonic Adventure Battle 2, I just like hate Eggman. I have no clue why Dr. Robotnik is so evil. I'm just like ready to kill him. So I don't know.
Wait, are you talking? Which game are you talking about?
Sonic Adventure
Sonic.
Battle 2.
Uh, I thought it was just Sonic Adventure. Is there also a Sonic Adventure Battle?
Sonic Adventure Battle 2 is the best game of all time. You probably played it. You probably
I've
think
I've only played Sonic Adventure 1 and 2.
you start like the very beginning of the game is one of the best intros to like a running game that can possibly happen. It's like you like bust out of something and you're like falling and you like land on a piece of metal and you start like skiing down
No,
streets.
that's Sonic Adventure 2, 100%.
Yeah,
Rolling around at the speed of sound.
that's it. That's it, man. And that's so to I think a Sonic game transferred to a good movie because it understood that people want to watch Sonic be snarky and run fast. And the movie did that. And, you know, the controversy around it, I think it felt like when people were like, hey, this looks like garbage and they fixed it, I think that was a lot of advertising and hype and people wanted it to be good. Like they felt like the devs cared about them. So they cared about their project more. Even though I've not seen it, so I'll say that with a grain of salt. But this is my theory. Game movies are only good if the mechanic that sells the game speaks through it. And here's what I mean by that. So like in a Zelda game, I'm gonna talk about Zelda too much, but in a Zelda game, imagine have you seen the original series?
Uh, of Zelda.
Yeah, like the cartoon.
There was a cartoon.
Oh man, I got it on DVD. I'll lend it to you through
Wait,
mail or
can I
something.
stop you? Okay, so a Sonic Adventure 2 Battle was a enhanced port of the Dreamcast Sonic Adventure 2. So I played
Oh.
the original, I guess, which was Sonic Adventure 2, but I guess they're the same game.
Yeah, okay, that's
Uh,
why I was always like, why does everybody never say
yeah,
the full name? But now
right. So did you play on GameCube or Dreamcast?
GameCube.
Yeah, okay, yeah, yeah. That it was a port
Yeah.
to GameCube, where
Okay.
I played it on Dreamcast, which
Oh.
was highly underrated.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it had supreme graphics for the time.
And the little controller, the screen on the controller that you could take out, the memory card had a screen on it and buttons, and you could play games on the memory card. Like,
That's pretty smart. I didn't know that.
I would take that thing and just like play mini versions of the games that I'm playing at home, and it was the coolest thing ever.
Miyamoto must have saw that, and that must have gave him another fever dream. Like that must have been what made the DS happen.
Right.
It was like two screens,
Yeah.
handheld. I know what to do now.
Dude, the triggers, oh my God, dude, everything about that controller and that system was just so good. And it had online connectivity, which was neglected.
Oh right, yeah. It was just a little too
Uh,
soon. Like internet
yeah,
was still
dude,
wasn't
if the
beautiful enough
Dreamcast,
yet.
if they came out with a Dreamcast 2, I think everybody would get it. Maybe not. Maybe
Oh
they don't have the IPs that they used to because they sold all of them.
well, that's a good. That would be an interesting thing to happen. Like somebody like so Twinkies died, right? But then somebody bought the IP and they're like Twinkies are back, and then suddenly their sales went better because everybody,
Right.
it was a big marketing thing.
Hmm.
Dreamcast is back. It'd probably do really well. So Sonic Adventure Battle 2, the mechanic is running and racing, and the
Hmm.
entire the movie trailer, at least what sold the movie, he's running all the time. He's racing. He's like stopping time and running and running and running.
You're talking
And
about the new movie?
yeah, the new movie,
Hmm.
and or the yeah, whatever Sonic movie, and
Yeah.
it makes sense because it's the mechanic, right? Like he can
Hmm.
run fast, and like that is like all what the movie's about is how fast Sonic can run, and he's got to run faster,
Hmm.
and like that is the game mechanic. Rushing through a Sonic game is what makes it fun. Like you just got to run and jump and flip around and go through loop de loops, and in a movie he's running and jumping and flipping around and going through loop de loops, and it just feels like Sonic, right? Even
Yeah.
though the story isn't my pristine freedom fighters, Dr. Robotnik's turning animals into robots story. I don't know exactly what the story is, but like even though the story's different, it still serves the mechanic. And so like in a Zelda game, exploration is the mechanic, right? And if they
Yeah.
made a Zelda game like it felt like a Lord of the Rings movie, it would probably do extremely well. But if they made it like Star Wars, it would not.
Oh
Um,
no, definitely.
yeah, right. And I think that would be the huge difference. Is Lord of the Rings is about exploration and landscape as a big part of it, not just character. And
Mhm.
so, exploration and landscape and finding cool stuff is what like Zelda's about. right? So in Lord of the Rings, they're finding cool swords, they're going to cool places, they're learning cool backstories, all while the story's
Right.
happening, right? And in
Like a
Zelda,
D&D campaign.
yeah, exactly. And in Zelda, you should be doing the exact same thing in the movie. You should be running around meeting cool people like Gorons, right? You should be
Hmm.
going to cool places, learning about cool weapons and cool backstories, and like it's a collectathon. But in the most epic proportions, where you like all these secret places and mysteries, and like, oh, I didn't know this cool thing was going to happen. And so, like, Lord of the Rings and Zelda would be like that storytelling type marries really well, right? But I guarantee when they make a Zelda thing, they're going to freaking make Star Wars. They're going to make a coming of age story, which doesn't work at all because Link, yes, it's a coming of age story, but Link is a static figure. They say, are you brave? Because if you're brave, you're going to fix everything for everybody, right? This is a Back to the Future story. And Back to the Future, he has no character development. Marty McFly believes you should not give in to bullies. You believe in who you are and you just go for it, man. You try out for the band practice and for the battle of bands and you fail and you keep moving, right? You still got a
Yeah.
girlfriend and everything's fine because you're Marty McFly. And even though your parents aren't very fly, you're fly. And you just keep pushing. And so, like, Marty McFly believes in that, and he doesn't give in to any bullies or anything throughout the entire experience. So then, like, the whole movie is about him going back in time. He teaches his dad to stand up to bullies. He stands up to bullies, even though he's like weaker and whatever. He just doesn't care. He just is like, this is what you just can't let people. They call him, what do they call him, Yellow in one of them, and he's like,
Mhm.
what'd you call me? And he turns around and starts having a gunfight in the third one because he just doesn't believe you should give in to a bully. And whether that's right or not, that's what the story's telling. And in Zelda, the story's telling, like, there's this kid, he's given this immense weight, and he says you got to go and be brave, right? And his bravery influences all the other characters. Many times Zelda goes through a huge amount of character development. Sometimes she does, sometimes she doesn't. Many times she does. In the stories, many times, Groose goes through a huge character development if you play Skyward Sword. You have Ocarina of Time has all sorts of little people that you meet throughout it that go through some character developments, like the guy in the woods that disappears. That's a weird side story, right? Or you
The Skull
watch,
Kid.
yeah, the Skull Kid is a whole nother like side story going on. Or you meet
Hmm.
Malin and she's got the side story being oppressed and you free her from this oppression. Or Ingo gets humbled, or the her dad, I can't remember his name right now. Talon? No.
I thought that sounds right. Maybe that's
Talon,
their
I think,
last
is the
name.
bad guy.
Like,
Malin, Talon, and
yeah,
yeah, no, Indigo or Inigo. Yeah,
something
so
like that.
Talon is a dude who has to keep like running away and coming back and running away and coming back from his problems, and so he's kind of lazy and all these things, and so you kind of see his character development of when he finally like has a moment where he's like, I'm coming back for good this time. Or you watch Malin turn into the ranch runner. She
Do
comes
you
into
remember
her
how
own.
awesome of a feeling it was whenever you found out that Sheik was Zelda?
Yeah, right. And
Like,
that is a
that
plot
was mind
twist.
blowing.
Yeah, and it's because she's even got different color eyes, right? And
Hmm.
and it's a great plot twist because you're just like, where's Zelda? Like, she's gone, and
Yeah.
and it's so hard. It's like Darth Vader's Luke's father. Like, I feel like
Hmm.
all the young kids who replayed the game on the DS and stuff, like, you just can't go into it with the same. Like, it's culturally known now. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, when you're just playing a game and this is like pre-internet, like the internet exists, but you're not, you don't have the time to sit 25 minutes for a page to load all the time. So like, this is
Right.
when I was in fourth grade, dude. Yeah, and I finally, or like fifth or sixth grade, when I'm finally beating the game, and yeah, and it happens. I'm just like, what? Right, and that's a great plot reveal. But that reveal doesn't happen to Link. It's not like plot twist. It's been you, the hero, the whole time. It's like, no, there is no plot twist. You've been the hero the whole time. The plot twist is Zelda's also been the hero the whole time. Like, she's been helping you the whole time.
Do you think that game would be the same without the story?
I do not think so. Yeah, 110,000% do not think so. Yeah, and that's what I think is is the problem. Even though you can have a Zelda game with very light story, right? Like the original Zelda game is just like find 8 pieces, save the
Mm-hmm.
princess. This one is like Ocarina of Time is all about mood and story as a mechanic has to deliver like mood. Like it's dark and brooding, and there's so many implications of what's happening that's just never said to you. That just a show don't tell the whole way through. And you walk into these places, the sound design is just
Mm-hmm.
absolutely stellar. The fact that the graphics were at the time mind-numbingly amazing. Like I just remember sitting there watching Epona kick up dust particles, and I'm like, "What is this? There's dust on the ground." Like
Yeah.
it's so hard to people who don't remember the big change that was. But this is a game where the story is essential because it's like it puts you in the middle of this adventure, and if that's the game mechanic, right, it wants to give you an adventure. And I do not think, even though the story is just explaining the mechanics, it's got those limitations, I do not think Ocarina of Time would exist without the story. And I think that's really the only reason it still stands up to Breath of the Wild.
Do you think that the Breath of the Wild has more or less story than like the previous games, like Ocarina of Time?
It's a great question. I'd say so. Funnily enough, hot take here. I think Ocarina of Time has more story. Now, that's not to say I don't think Breath of the Wild has a great story. Breath of the Wild has a fantastic story. I love the non-linear style. Like when I found the first couple memories, I was like, why is everybody so pissed at Link? Like it was just so strange. Like I found the one I like ran to the first area where I dodged a bunch of guardian lasers to find the first memory because I was like, I bet that's it. I bet that's where it is. And then I found that memory, and they were all like, "Man, they're really depressed." And Zelda's just like, "I'm really depressed." And I was like, "What's going on?" And then like I find another memory nearby where she's just like, "Do you hear the sword, hero?" And I was like, "Whoa, what's going on? Like, what did Link do?" And then like I was just gripped. Like I was like, I gotta know. And then I found like Rivali's. I had already Mifa was nice to Link, so and then I found Rivali, and then he was like, "Can you even get up there?" And he was like talking bad about Link, and I was like, "What the heck?" And then I found Zelda like in front of that thing. I found Zelda turn around and be like, "Stop following me!" And I was like, "Why is everybody so pissed at Link?" And then I learned a broader story about the internal struggles going on, and it was just so much fun to pick this thing apart and learn the story. So I do really
Yeah.
applaud that.
Yeah, it's almost like they gave it to you in pieces that could be rearranged in any order and put back together, you know?
Yeah,
Whereas like Ocarina of Time, there was kind of an order where you had to do things. Like there was kind of like you like had to go to each dungeon, but it didn't really matter what order you went in, but you still had to do all that stuff. But with Breath of the Wild, you don't have to do anything. You can go beat Ganon up right at the beginning with a stick, you know?
yeah.
So yeah, like there's no like they kind of give you like free reign on so like make your own story instead of following the story that was set out for you.
And I want to say that that is amazing. Like, so what I'm about to say about Ocarina of Time does not negate the fact that the systemic storytelling in Breath of the Wild is stupendous for all the reasons you just said. But there's something about the mood of Ocarina of Time, and it's not just that it's darker. Like, Majora's Mask is darker, but it's it's that like there's a sense of presence and world that is just so in Ocarina of Time. That's just so
Ominous.
yeah. It's like the whole thing. It's like the very beginning. This fairy
Yeah,
is
you can.
coming to
I
find
think
you.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, just the fact. What really scared me when I was a kid was the skeletons that popped up out of the ground at nighttime,
Right.
and the wolf howling. I was like, oh my gosh, that gave me like such a sense of dread
Yeah,
when I
but
was
it
a
was
kid,
it was
and
astounding.
and being able to see the what's the volcano called?
Death
Um,
Mountain.
Death Mountain, just in the background, just kind of looming with like the circle of like dark clouds over it, and just like there was that I think that comes back into like the level design and the style, because you're it's not telling you the story, but it's giving you a feeling and giving you like like a sense of the universe that you're in, without straight up telling you, which I think is really really awesome and should be put in more games.
Yes, yeah, and I think that should be our next point is like level design, storytelling. But as why Breath of the Wild fails at that, it doesn't fail at that. The reason why it doesn't hit it so strongly, because like just I do not want anyone to think that I think Breath of the Wild did a bad job with story, with the nonlinear design and everything. Like it was fantastic, but the presence of Ocarina of Time is so strong because of these like really like it drops you into these moments in a way that really anchors you into the world. While everything in Breath of the Wild has this kind of running campiness, like, hey, look, it's a Korok, or like, haha, Ganon, I'm gonna pop you in the face.
Yeah, it's kind of like heartfelt or trying to give you that nostalgia feeling.
yeah, it's a little bit like serving it up on
Mystical.
a goth tea kind of thing. Like
Right, yeah.
it doesn't
Maybe a little bit of fan service.
yeah, it's a little bit of fan service for sure, and the music is great, and the mood. I like to not say the mood's
Dude,
bad.
the dynamic music in that is awesome.
It's absolutely essential to the storytelling too. Like I said, it did land. I feel
Yeah.
like it landed. It stuck a 10 on the storytelling. But if you're gonna compare like a master to a master, Ocarina of Time, just something about. I wish I could put my finger on it. Something about the mood of Ocarina of Time is just unmatched by any game I've played.
Do you
Well,
think you're because you played it so young and it was so impactful to you that it's amplifying your opinions on it?
I do to a degree because I used to play it like twice a year all the way through, and then friends of mine would beat it in one night like twice a year, and so like I played it so much. But then I stopped playing it for like years, and I came back to it and I played it again, and after Breath of the Wild, and I was like, this game's gonna feel so bad after Breath of the Wild. Like I actually was really scared I was gonna hate the old love. And then I just that's what hit me. I was just like, there's just some mood here, man, that like it's just unmatched. Like the mystical forest, right in the beginning, you're just like, who are the Kokiri? And like there's this looming dread in Ocarina of Time that's just like exciting and like pushes you forward.
Yeah, it
While
makes you want to fix it. Like these people are like sad for some reason. We need to bring some light to them. But
yeah,
like you don't know why. Like we just like realize this right now, you know? Like when we were a kid, we didn't think about those things. We just did them because that's what they wanted us to do.
yeah, and but we wanted to do it so much because that mood was just so fixed. Like right at the very
Yeah.
beginning, they're like everybody's just got such staunch opinions in Ocarina of Time. They're like, you can't go see the Deku Tree. You're a piece of crap, and you're just like, I'm what? And then you like find some stuff, and they're like, I guess you can see the Deku Tree, and then you see the Deku Tree, and it dies, and you have this like moment where you like this one person who believes in you,
Oh
they're
my
they're
gosh.
dead.
I totally forgot about the tree dying. That was the first thing.
First thing that happens is they're like, hey, the
Yeah.
guy who sends you on this mission, the guy who can explain everything, the guy who's actually got some authority, the guy who thinks you're worth something, he's dead.
Woof.
Yeah, and that's the beginning of Ocarina of Time, and then like so Saria, and then so there's one other person too. She thinks that you are um, worth something, right? She's right at your door. She like loves you as a friend, and you feel like you have this presence because she's so nice to you, and then everybody else is so mean to you. And this is like you said, it's not just like explicitly said like everybody hates you. Like it just is happening, and you leave the forest, and she's terrified and confused, and you don't like that, and she like gives you an ocarina, and there's this moment like just stuck with me since I saw it as a child, but I think it would stick with me again as an adult, is when you get the ocarina and you don't say anything, you just like back away and then run away.
And funny because he can't say anything.
Yeah, exactly, but it's like such
But
a
but that it kind of like ties back into that like restrictive creativity.
yes, exactly. They use this fact that like Link has no voice to really tell a story in a very visceral, very showy manner. That's just oh, it's so good.
To tie it back to the original question, does story matter at all?
I think the moral of the story is, is the story has to follow the mechanic. I think Mario's story works, even though like it's a
Which
textbook
one?
like all of them. Like just the fact that like Mario's always like,
His canon.
yeah, his canon is just like stupid ridiculous. Like it's a plumber. He went through some pipes. Now he's stepping on some things that look like mushrooms, but they're
It doesn't
not.
really have a story, does it?
I mean, it
Like
almost
it doesn't, like, he could be literally anything. He could be a car mechanic and it wouldn't change the game.
exactly. It would not. The pipes would be less explained, but only
Yeah, but
just.
how do you explain the turtles and
E-
mushrooms walking about, you know? Like
exactly.
it's so crazy that it doesn't necessarily need a story to it's literally just using those elements as like things to tie it together. Like it's creating its own universe, but it's not creating its own story, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna blow your mind here. Mario's story is nothing more than a springboard because Mario jumps, and the story is bouncy. And so, like, Mario needs to have this feeling like you're just constantly bouncing around. Like, anything
Yeah.
goes, whatever, you're going to fall into something, you're going to jump on something. And I think the story actually serves the mechanic that way. I think it's just a bouncy story. The music is bouncy, the story is bouncy. It's got, it's there to serve the mechanic.
Whenever I think of games that don't need a story, I think of Halo. But I also think of games with a great story, and I think of Halo.
I don't know, the mood and the world. Like, I don't feel like the multiplayer would be the same without the story.
Yeah. Um, I might disagree with you. I don't know.
Ooh,
If you just look at Halo, the multiplayer mechanics like by itself,
right.
um, they kind of separate they're kind of two different games, aren't they?
Yeah,
Because one of them, like you're not, you're just versing AI and you're like getting told this pretty story and like walking through in a linear fashion, unless you're talking about Infinite, which we won't talk about that. But um but and then the other one, you're fighting your friends and you're in like a small area, and it's you don't see these small areas in the main storyline. Well, I guess in some of them you do, but
not in a true sense, not in the kind of
yeah,
sense you
it's
see in
it's
multiplayer.
walled off. Like it's honestly just like the mechanics are different and it's a totally different game, but it's in the same universe. So
Yeah, does Halo story matter for the multiplayer? Because you could
yeah,
have Halo. I don't know, but Halo, yeah. So as like a first person storytelling thing, I was replaying Halo 1 the other day, and dude, like talk about mood and stuff. Like it's just so it's. I started on legendary just because I wasn't very good at the game, but I wanted to feel like I was good at the game. So I was like, if I can make any progress on legendary, I feel good at it.
yeah,
And I ended up reverting to hero after a while because it was like it was rough alone playing legendary. Just I was like, no. Um, Hero's a lot more heroic is a lot more doable. But as I was playing it, the story really hit me through mechanics because you have that everybody's like, hey, you have to save us is the story because you watch these Marines come in and they just get eviscerated. And you
yeah.
every time you always and like that's the first story is like you have to go save the Marines and they would all die in legendary and then the Cortana would go, we didn't save a single one, 100% casualty rate. And again, it plays to that story of like in Halo, you're the savior, right? And so like you have to, if you're not doing this, it's just not gonna happen. But also the struggle of the story is it's hard. Like everybody's like, oh, the chief's here, it's gonna be a piece of cake, and you're like, no, it's not, man. I'm gonna struggle to get these things dead. But you don't say a word. You just go, yep, we're gonna kill them all, and
Hmm.
you find a way to kill them all. And it's like this beautiful internal struggle of like you have to be this hero, but you're not as strong as they think you are.
Sure.
Sir, right? It's a good dang story. But yeah, does that have anything to do with the multiplayer? Like one of the things that sells Halo the most?
No. Yeah, because whenever I'm playing multiplayer Halo, I don't think of myself as Master Chief. I think of myself as like a Spartan, you know?
Right.
Unless even if I'm playing as Master Chief, like this is just some dummy that's gonna respawn in 5 seconds, you know.
Right. I was
So I don't like put myself in the shoes of Master Chief when I'm playing multiplayer, which I think uh, makes me like separate the campaign from the multiplayer more.
my head canon for the multiplayer was always like training mode. Like you're doing a training sim, and so like you're gonna
Yeah,
feel like you die and stuff, but you're always gonna come back and keep training.
yeah, definitely. So I don't know. Does
You know?
does does the story matter in video games? It depends on the game.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
guess it depends maybe on the game that you are trying to uh make, because if you have an idea for a game and the idea is story based, then it should be story based.
Right, like a interactive novel. The main mechanic is the story, right? So it makes
Yeah,
sense that the
exactly.
story comes first as the
Yeah.
mechanic.
But if there wasn't any story and it was just clicking through text and like that was the game, then like that's not really a game.
Yeah, that's just
you know. So I guess
garbagey.
there's a balance. Like you have to have either like a really good like sandbox or a really good multiplayer, or you have to have a really good story.
And I would like to add to that a little bit. I think you always need to be aware that human beings are telling themselves a story constantly. Like what we do is we kind of contextualize our lives as a
Your own
story.
interpretation. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think it's important to note that like when someone comes to your game, they're going to tell themselves a story immediately. Probably one of the things about like pirate VR, whatever, space
Mhm.
pirate VR, what's it called?
Uh uh yeah, space pirate something.
Simulator? Is it
Oh gosh.
is it Space
Okay, I'm
Pirate
gonna look it up.
Simulator? Yeah.
Trainer, space pirate trainer.
Space Pirate Trainer.
Yeah.
It tries to do that. I feel like it tries to give you a sense of mood and a sense of purpose, like, you're training to be a space pirate. But like one of the things that I played the game, and it was fun. It was a good little shooter, like a target shooter game. But like
Mhm.
I felt like it was just so contrived, and like it doesn't like the story doesn't super
I
move
never
over it.
got I got the space. I didn't get the pirate. Or
Exactly.
like when I think of space pirate, I think of like a floating like water ship.
Yeah,
Like a ship that belongs in the water but like floating in the background.
like
or
almost like
or like
Treasure Planet
yeah, or like I don't know.
or Cowboy
Yeah,
Bebop.
exactly. Yeah. Yo,
I,
Cowboy Bebop. Yes, thank you. That's what I was thinking
you
of.
don't feel like a space pirate at all. You just feel like a dude shooting targets.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it's still fun. Like until you break it apart and tear it apart, like it's still like a good game.
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
solid
and it doesn't
target shooter.
need a story because they didn't intend for there to be a story in the first place. It's
Right.
just, something to grab your attention and play their mini game.
But I think the fact that they felt like they had to name it Space Pirate Trainer, I think points to the fact that you have to contextualize it somehow because it will
Hmm.
no it will be contextualized. The player will contextualize it. They'll tell themselves some
Right.
sort of story about it, and even just the smallest of ways. But you can really influence how they experience the game by giving them a context that's easy to like run with.
Here you go. The story is the thing that ties the mechanics together.
Boom. Even
Um,
yeah, even in small ways. And that yeah, I think the fact that we can say that for random target shooters uh, goes a long way.
dang.